All right, welcome everybody to the final America This Week from Milwaukee. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm Walter Kern.
Walter, it just never ends. Even this morning, it doesn't end.
Yeah, at 2 a.m, just after I fell asleep, it turns out my wife texted me to say there had been a cyber attack. Because I think it's a specific worldwide cyber attack aimed at Milwaukee to keep us all from getting our planes home. Um, but and in fact, the app for the airline I use is down. I have paranoid friends who I find more and more to be common sense friends who were telling me that the convention would be a respite, not the beginning of weirdness, but a respite from the weirdness. And I think that might be true. I think that the Illuminati might have allowed us a few days for Republicans to have their little party and their little, populist shindig and barbecue while they get ready to pull the big levers again. And of course, they are pulling the big levers as far as Biden goes. It's just that we don't get to be in the room because
Right.
in our democracy, Jeffrey Katzenberg and Barack and whoever else it is, Tony Blinken, make phone calls to decide what's going to happen next for the quote party of the people, the Democrats.
Right. Yeah, they have, it's like due process, but it doesn't have to involve the defendant, right? So
Right.
it's a democracy, except just not, involving the rest of the country. So we're going to try to get through all this quick because we're not going to be on long, but last night the finale of the RNC was kind of crazy and sort of eye-popping, I would say, like until Trump spoke, at which point, one of the commenters said that he blew a big opportunity with his big rambling speech. I kind of felt that way. Also, I think we're going to get into why maybe his speech was like that. The Hulk Hogan thing was nuts, but the Kid Rock song, which we'll play a little bit of in a minute, was when the whole stadium kind of went nuts. But we wake up after this to the cyber attack, and not only is it CrowdStrike that's responsible for the cyber attack, but look at
that is CrowdStrike went down. They weren't responsible for it, but they're named in the lead to the stories as the massive cyber shield that was breached.
Well, yeah, I guess that's what I mean by responsible.
Right.
It was a breach of cyber of CrowdStrike that triggers this whole thing. So we're seeing that name in the headlines, and then this tweet pops up. I guess this would have been in the morning, British time and London time, from none other than Christopher Steele. The British media and political class have started normalizing Trump and his isolationist running mate, J.D. Vance, his isolationist running mate, thinking they might win in November. In reality, this ticket poses a profound threat to our security, economy, and rule of law. I hope we are planning accordingly.
Matt,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to be absolutely clear with you. No single event of the last few months has raised my hackles more profoundly than this tweet.
Yeah.
To put this tweet out by this guy who put our country through hell with his bullshit Russian dossier paid for by Hillary and his pretenses to being James Bond and speaking somehow for the, the spiderweb structure of our security that lies beneath everyday life in the intel world. For him to come out and have the gall to come out and make a threat, the kind of threat really that could arguably have led to this assassination attempt. The next day after the Republicans nominate their person is, to me, impudent and ominous and outrageous. Outrageous. Remember, this dude is a lackey. He does things because he gets money for them. and he doesn't even ask that much money. How much did he get for the dossier?
Like $66,000 total.
Right.
And remember, he turned down like 12 times that amount later to be an informant.
Right. And he's
Yeah.
telling us that Trump or whatever and his isolationist running mate are a threat to the rule of law. What was the rest of it? Was it our way of life or something?
It was, hang on a second.
I mean, it was ultimate rhetoric.
Profound threat to our security, economy, and rule of law.
Our economy.
Yeah.
What's he talking about? How is it?
Uh,
So in any case, the threats that the Democrats have had to tamp down a little bit in the wake of the assassination attempt, they handed off, just as they did their Russia threat last time, to this frickin' international lickspittle and tool with his fancy name and his stupid hair. And he imports that false alarm, that sense of emergency back to the United States. Really, are you guys doing it again? I guess Hillary Clinton must be running, right? Because Christopher Steele's showing up.
Right, exactly. And the reason I'm putting this up on the screen here, the Jane Meyer profile in the New Yorker, is just to remind everybody how ridiculous this got and how much this guy sort of was part of the mythos of that whole fraud. This is the profile where Christopher Steele was sort of lavishly praised as a modern day George Smiley, the fictional Nebuchadnezzar, man of the shadows from John le Carré novels. And remember, the Steele dossier was essentially like invented fan fiction that they passed off as real research. And this guy goes on to, he did this very careful selective media tour where he went on with all these, he gives the sort of interview to New Yorker. He had another TV interview. I'm forgetting who interviewed him, but it was like a much anticipated thing. So he very much participated in the whole building up of his own character.
He loves the limelight.
Yeah,
he loves it. But I want to say one more thing about his tweet. The last sentence. I hope we are planning.
Yeah, we.
Exactly. What is the plural pronoun there? Well, he starts with the British media and political class doing something and started normalizing things. Does his we mean me and people like me? There's something about it that's a little clubby, that isn't like, because Christopher Steele doesn't identify with you riding the subway, believe me, or you in driving your taxi cab. He's talking about the people who can plan accordingly for this threat. He's talking to his fellow spooks and movers and shakers and his imagined class and real class, I suppose, as we saw from the Russia thing, because this fucked our politics until today. It's still fucking it. And
right.
And we're going to go for round 2 now, man. Believe me, he didn't send this signal without his bosses. These guys don't do anything without their bosses. Chain of command is everything.
Yeah, I mean, to have CrowdStrike and Chris Steele in the news the morning after Trump is nominated it's kind of sending a signal. I don't know. Of course, the CrowdStrike thing is, there's no evidence to suggest it's anything other than an accident on their part. It's just
Matt.
Yeah.
When the world dies in a nuclear exchange of 1,000 missiles, there will be no evidence that it wasn't just a computer glitch.
Right.
Unless we start acting before we wait for the New York Times to approve our sense of reality, we're going to be cinders. And I'm sorry, I get to use my the hackles on the back of my neck and my intuition and my historical memory. And these people are making their move to come back and run their game, and I don't like it. And they're doing it instantly after this convention.
Yeah. Well, We should get to the Democratic reaction. Probably just sort of quickly run through what happened last night. Walter, we actually got to the hall just as this speech was ending. This is Hulk Hogan, and we heard a little bit of it, but everybody was sort of shaking their heads and laughing in the section where I was watching at the end of this thing. But this is the moment that's going to be replayed a lot. Russell Brand was tweeting, "I've seen it all now." So here's about a minute of Hulk Hogan.
What happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States? Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
USA, USA.
USA chants never last as long now as they used to.
Yeah, that's true. Even in Boston, when the Red Sox play the Blue Jays, they used to do an interminable USA every time a Blue Jay went to bat in Fenway, and they're kind of muted now. But that got to a pretty loud place. And then at the end, there was he did this crazy apostrophic thing where, if you mess with Donald Trump, what was the line at the end?
All you drug dealers, all you low lifes.
Right, exactly. Like we're coming for you, kind of a thing.
Trump comes for you. It was. I loved it. Since politics is a lot like professional wrestling, and since I think we should be reminded that it is constant. You see, I don't like this thing about dignity and classiness in politics. It's a rough game, okay, man. It's a game of crowds and enthusiasm and a lot of cheating, and it's just like wrestling. And and I'm sorry, and being reminded of that fact periodically is, I think, healthy. It doesn't offend me. I don't spill my tea when I see it. So why not have some great American entertainers? I was at the Democratic Convention in 2012. Foo Fighters came out and said, "Here comes my hero." It's all false, and that was for the classiest law professor president we've ever had, Barack Obama. Kid Rock, Hulk Hogan, right on,
Right, yeah. When in 2016, when Trump was running, everybody was reading these like Hannah Arendt books about authoritarianism. And
yeah.
I started reading books about pro wrestling because it was pretty obvious that Trump was using a lot of WWE motifs in his speeches and his whole
conventions are about crowds. It's the one time a political party gets a crowd of its faithful in one room. It has every right to fire them up in any way it can.
Exactly.
It's expecting them to leave that day and go out and do a lot of unpaid labor.
I guess the difference between this campaign and last campaign is like Trump's previous campaigns had subtexts of WWE.
Exactly.
Right
Subtext
now, it openly is WWE, and they had Dana White speaking. And by the way, the New York Times write up of the Hulk Hogan speech was hilarious. They called him Mr. Balea.
Oh, yeah, right. His real name.
Mr. Balea. Yeah, exactly. So let's. I want to put on a little bit of the Kid Rock too, because that was. I just don't even know how to characterize how crazy that was. But Walter, what did you think of that performance? Where were you, by the way? Were we together by that point? I think
when Kid Rock happened, I
Yeah.
think we were. I mean, the visuals were flames in the flag. Let's see it.
Here we go.
Throw a fist in the air, let me see where you at. Say fight, fight. Say fight, fight. Say fight, fight. Say Trump, Trump.
Dude, it was a male stripper night at the RNC.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking off your coat was the theme last night.
There where I was when you did Trump, the whole section was doing the fist, and now
Right.
think about the image. That imagery now is part of the assassination attempt imagery is now part of this whole thing. It became a crowd slogan. They've leaned into that theme quite a lot throughout the entire show. And I only bring this up to mention that the energy level got so high in the building that I think what happened with Trump's speech. Trump came on and was very somber. Walter, how would you characterize the beginning of his speech? Because I thought what he needed to do, Kid Rock ended with a literal mic drop. He drops his mic and walked off. The crowd goes bananas. There's then a speech by Dana White, and you're expecting, Trump to come out, and do something like, you think this is fake, and pull off the ear bandage, or I don't know, or do something crazy, flex.
Matt, they're already criticizing him for being insufficiently conciliatory, as though his role or his instinct after nearly being assassinated should be to come out and extend a hand of love and peace to the other side. It was very weird. If he'd pulled something like that, I don't think it would have worked. Maybe they shouldn't have had such a drum roll for somebody who couldn't really afford to pay it off. The truth is, I didn't expect that because I was thinking about the real human situation, which is that a guy who just got shot on Saturday has not had a moment of peace since then. He had to choose a vice president. He had to go through this whole, convention process, which has got me exhausted, and I can't imagine what it's like for him. And then he had to get up there for the first time since he's been up in front of a crowd since he was nearly killed, nearly had his head blown off. This was the first time Trump looked out on a sea of human faces since last Saturday. And I feel I am going to hazard that this is literally true, that there was a therapist involved, because he got up there and they made him, as the first order of business, or he chose as the first order of business, to recite a TikTok of the assassination attempt. And he said, almost as though a therapist had made them do this, "You'll never see me do this again because, frankly, it's too painful." Now, I've been through psychological therapy for trauma. What they make you do is relive the trauma, but in a way that shows you it's not going to end that way again. And so they have him go through the sort of psychological reality of the thing. And it even ends with him looking at the same chart. In other words, they marched him through that process. And we got to see a guy's trauma therapy in front of the entire nation and world and this arena. Now, people say, what he needed to do politically. I think Trump's a little bit done with politics. Frankly, I think he's in another sphere. He's trying to knit together a life, his psyche, an experience of having been, sued, accused of being a Russian agent, hounded, impeached, now sat down in courtrooms against his will, and now shot. And what's interesting about the speech is that it was in no fashion a future Hitler to me. I mean, they might. What now? They're criticizing for being insufficiently galvanizing. Wait, last week he was too galvanizing. He was an Argentine or Italian dictator on the rise.
Right. I mean, there was a little bit of, I mean, if you really wanted to go there, if you had, you know, a triumph of the will type of filmic idea, you could have made a lot out of the imagery from last night before Trump got on stage, right?
Sure.
But
But what the essence of what you're saying is that there was a contradiction between what happened on stage before him and what he did when he got there.
yeah, so you expected him to ride on a motorcycle onto on the stage like you know, Dwayne Elizondo, Mountain Dew, Herbert Camacho from Idiocracy, you know, the Terry Crews character. But he didn't. He was very muted. By the way, one of the commenters, Fran, said that we were in the same room because we have the same painting. No, we're in the same gigantic corporate hotel complex. Walter's on a different floor, so we're in different places. Yeah, so Trump came on. He gave that speech. It was, you know, he was very strange. He was sort of off script for a lot of the beginning of it. You know, I've been to a lot of Trump speeches, and he usually tries to come out with some kind of zinger early, and up the energy level quickly. This was kind of the opposite of that. And then he went on for, after he did that whole you know, recitation of the assassination, which I thought was kind of mawkish at parts. But look, he's going through something, right? I don't want to be too negative about it, but politically, it was a little weird. But he recovered himself. The actual speech, content-wise, he stayed away from a lot of hot-button cultural war issues. You know, like reproductive rights. He did talk about sort of protectionism, that, you know, we're going to protect your jobs. We're going to bring all the jobs that were lost from auto manufacturing back. You know, I don't know about that, right? Like, that's kind of a big claim. He talked about the border a lot. And then it just went on for a long time. Even people who were Trump supporters were commenting on that on the way out. But you know, as you say, one of the effects of that speech is going to be to dent the image of him as a Hitlerian monster, because he just didn't deliver that performance. So they're going to have to, I don't know, propaganda-wise, what do you think, Walter? What are they? Are they going to?
You know, they're quickly training their fire on Vance, who they're trying to make as menacing a character as possible. Because I'm sorry, Grandpa Trump right now isn't as menacing as they'd like him to be. Number two, and I'm going to advance this as a master thesis. Our politics is not what it was, okay? America and Trump's people, and the Democrats too, feel they keep using the word existential. They feel they're in some situation, a chaotic and ominous situation that is sort of beyond normal politics. To expect him to go out there and do some sing-song, you know, fake preacherly speech, I think was completely wrong. People I saw on television felt like the guy was just sort of in a rambling, not wanting to go home way, talking. You know, he was off script probably as much as he was on it or more.
Yeah.
He's like, to me as a writer, as a creator of human situations on the page, I was like, this is a guy who doesn't want to go down and lay down in the dark alone again. He's with a crowd. He's kind of not on our time schedule anymore. I mean, he's on dream time. He's on post-assassination time. He's looking out mesmerized into a crowd of people and going, and his subconscious is going, a bullet's coming, and his conscious is going, no, that was Saturday. And so I feel that these metrics about what he needs to do and did he do it are all wrong. I just think they're all wrong. Everybody can say it was a rambling speech, and it was. Everybody can say that it was, you know, too long, and it was, given 1976 standards for politics or 1984 standards. But I don't know what 2024 standards for anything are. And, you know, one of the comments I saw repeatedly last night, which was sort of interesting, was wow, it's 11:30 and Joe Biden's been in bed for 4 hours. You know, I don't know if that was cope, what they, call cope on the part of Republicans, but it was kind of interesting that like young people were like, I got to hit the sack. And the 80-year-old was, I got another story to tell, kids,
Right. Yep. Yeah. So Trump loves the experience of being on stage. That was one of the first things that you notice about him if you go to his speeches, is that he doesn't like to be on script, because that for him is not part of the experience of interacting with an audience. It's one of the reasons I didn't like his 2016 speeches, because it was almost entirely read. He's much more comfortable kind of winging it and
Right.
hitting things that sort of parts of his speech that he's remembered, and then going off script and doing ad hoc things, insulting people, that sort of thing. This time though, I saw him in Sioux Center, Iowa earlier this year, and he was on for an hour and 48 minutes. By the end of it, you saw even his most passionate followers kind of sneaking out to vape and stuff.
Right.
And so this is the thing. It's as you say, the crowds are kind of his crutch emotionally. He doesn't like to leave them.
But you know what? You know what is also long and rambling and draws crowds, and draws huge crowds of incredibly fanatic people?
What?
Grateful Dead shows,
Oh,
man.
that's true. Yeah.
Fish shows where they sit there and noodle away on their instruments for 20 minutes. So I don't know that being galvanizing in the traditional way has much to do with Donald Trump. It's, people want to be around the vibe. They even get bored with the vibe. They go out and take acid in the parking lot and come back. I don't know. I wish there was more of that, but probably isn't.
You just sent me into a flashback of taking acid and listening to Golgi Apparatus at a Fish concert when I was like 19 years old. So yeah, those they do go on for a long time, but so it went on for a long time. Should we get into the Q stuff? Do we do we have to? I think we probably have to, right?
What's that?
The ending, the opera ending.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's.
Okay, so
I've got to use my expertise in Fever Swamp conspiracy theories sometimes, so let's use it here.
Walter is a QAnon expert. I wrote like one story on QAnon, and I don't remember really any of it. It didn't penetrate my consciousness all that well, so I don't know to look out for the signs. So he ended with the opera singer Christopher Macchio. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this is from La Boheme, Nessun Dorma. Everybody will probably recognize the song.
Matt?
Yep.
Get the Sum of All Fears ending with this. So you can play.
Okay. Yep. All right, so that's
the opposite of Kid Rock.
Night. Yep.
Actually, no, that's the forerunner of a Kid Rock.
Right. And this is
the end of the movie, The Sum of All Fears, a Tom Clancy book about an averted nuclear war. That's one of the bad guys. And this is the signing of the treaty between the U.S. and Russia, okay? Because they foiled the plot to make them fight each other. And that's Liv Schreiber killing one of the bad guys. And here's an assassin chasing another one of the bad guys through the snow.
For the Russian Federation.
Etc.
Darren Hines, the Irish actor.
Uh-oh, don't start your car.
Don't do it, dude. You're under the...
Oh, no. Oh, wait, your car is okay. Is it? Oh, it's the pressure switch. No, it's the other. Yeah. This is good. It's worth waiting for.
All right.
They know he pushes in the cigarette button. Ah, I didn't die. Yeah, and so on. So anyway, the same song was played. Now you go, that's an accident, Walter, you nuts. But in the world of the quote Q texts that came out on 4chan, 8chan, and so on, The Sum of All Fears was a very important movie. And it was mentioned many, many times by this anonymous poster who called himself Q. And we were told that we're watching a movie. One of the theses of this Q thing is that you're watching a movie. There's something about political reality which is scripted. And one of the movies we were told to look for parallels with was The Sum of All Fears.
I guess it's theoretically possible that he didn't know that, but Trump seems to throw those little Easter eggs out there.
He knows it.
Yeah.
He knows it. Come on. I mean, I've studied this phenomena. To me, this was like comic books. I know every issue. I know when each character was introduced. I know the storylines, the superpowers of the various players. Yeah. It's not without significance to the hardcores among the, Q community that was the song that was played. It means I'm going to take revenge.
Right.
It means time. It means time's up.
So yeah, we were talking about this morning, Walter. Trump is now. So now let's look at the RNC in total.
Yeah.
I think it was sort of fascinating in a lot of ways. It was a very different kind of Republican convention. I've never been to one that even remotely resembled
Right.
this spectacle. I mean, the other Trump conventions had nothing in common with, not very much in common with this. The Kid Rock thing, the WWA, the overtness of that, and the clearly obvious efforts to play to different demographics than they usually do,
Right.
Was really interesting. And so now they emerged from what most people are saying was a very well produced well done, RNC. It was interesting. It got a lot of media attention. The speech is getting panned by everybody naturally. The incident was over.
So,
MSNBC,
as I said in another podcast this week, when I woke up after the 2016 acceptance speech, it was being universally panned too as super dark, super negative, dystopian, etc. I don't think Trump people care what the press says about his speeches, but I will say this: the big knock on Trump, this is what I learned at the convention. This is my overall lesson. The big knock on Trump is that he's just this guy, this freestyling maniac narcissist who doesn't really have an organization, who doesn't really have the ability to staff a presidency, who, is ill-disciplined. But we learned the opposite at this convention. The convention itself ran off like clockwork, like the best produced Oscars show ever. It didn't go over. There was a succession of interesting choices made. It was thematically disciplined.
they weren't scrambling for speakers like they were last time. And if you remember, Scott Baio got asked like 72 hours before the convention if he would be in the opening.
Also, in our little media center, we got to see that there is now a right-wing Republican, whatever you want to call it, libertarian, independent media sphere with its own stars, its own ecosystem. And it's, it may look a little paltry compared to, MSNBC and so on, but it exists. There were celebrity podcasters, celebrity influencers. This whole thing has just grown up out of nowhere. Like, in political time, it grew up overnight. And it's rather full blown now. I saw podcasters mobbed and, with groups following them around whose name I didn't know a few years ago.
And there were others whose names we do know who were, whose presence there was kind of surprising. Russell Brand was there. He had a team of people around him everywhere he went. I didn't even get a chance to say hello. There were who else was there that we should make note of? Well, while I remember that, I just want to. I'll put on screen some of the reaction stuff while we talk about this. So there is a new type of media. There were a lot of sort of libertarian folks there.
Who wrote this one?
This is the guest essay from the New York Times.
By whom?
It's just a House editorial.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But they all have the exact same opinion. Look at how many people at the New York Times have the same opinion.
Yeah. So what you're doing is looking at all the. Here's basically
David Brooks.
One of the truly awful and self-indulgent political performances of our time. It was Trump untethered. Trump couldn't resist returning to his familiar darkness. Entirely.
Oh yeah, he just got shot. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Wholly insincere. A sporting event for people who tell others how much they hate sports.
What?
Humility is for losers in the.
Well, they all have to say something different, right?
Yeah, exactly. At times, the speech was actually boring. Okay, I'll give him that.
Telling the truth.
Yep. Trump made many false claims about immigration. Might be true. I didn't listen that closely. Great evening for golf and professional wrestling.
You don't watch either.
Yeah. So what they're doing is here are the positive comments. Felt unfocused, low energy.
That's one of the positive ones. She felt unusually low energy and unfocused.
Yeah, it looks like
that's the second best of all the comments.
The convention made pop culture great again was Dan McCarthy's comment. So
I'll just give about the whole convention. No. Oh, the question is, did the night help Trump?
Yeah. After Trump's speech, it's absurd to suggest he can't be beaten. Barry Weiss tweeted something to that effect last night as well. Let's see. Politico was pretty harsh, if I remember correctly. Hang on a sec. Yikes. Oops. Well, it's I don't subscribe to Politico. The headline there is Donald Trump derailed his own convention. So there was
How
a
can
lot.
you derail something which has reached its final stop.
Yeah, and we saw last night after the event that MSNBC Trump wraps up in RNC with meandering speech, and this is going to be the theme after the event. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's what they're going to focus on is the speech. Now we're talking, Walter, that the age may become actually an issue with Trump. He didn't look, as you said, did he look like a person who wanted to be campaigning a lot going forward? I don't know about that.
We're expecting this guy. I mean, everyone's expecting this guy to have recovered in a matter of days from an assassination attempt, doing exactly what you have to do all the time during a campaign. He's supposed to get through that. And I'm going to tell you what, I've studied trauma before. You know what's traumatizing to Trump? Even worse than the fact that he almost died? It's that somebody else right next to him did die. If you know veterans, that's the thing they cannot get over, that somebody else died and they didn't do all they could, or someone died who should have been them. That, that's upsetting. And I know to others it's anathema to humanize this guy because we've been told not to, and we've been told politics is this cold game of winning and losing. But I'm gonna be different than the rest of them and all the New York Times. It's not gonna matter. The thing about going to conventions is you think every hour, every 3 hours, every night is the most important night of all time. And they think that one long speech that was rather like any Trump speech, except more subdued, derailed everything. This is the wish casting of the Dems and the panic of nervous Republicans. Not going to matter a bit. We've got 3.5 months of Philip K. Dick inside out mindfuck coming.
Mm-hmm.
And in about 12 hours, it ain't going to matter. What matters to me is that he built a movement at this convention. He's got an heir apparent, which he never had. He had Mike Pence, some stooge sitting there with his hair. Now he's got it. Now he's got a
not
surrogate.
Just some stooge, the stooge. I think Mike Pence is like the dictionary definition.
Right. So now let's really count up the results. He's got a successor. He's got a young successor. He's got now apparently an organization that can put on a good political convention, which means maybe he's got one that can actually mount a disciplined campaign and staff a real White House. That was the big knock on him before. And he's apparently succeeded in that. So, the obvious play-by-play is interesting. But I think what actually happened here was more interesting, which was that Donald Trump took over the Republican Party, created a movement that is more than just him, and is sallying forth in a media ecosystem that, in a weird way, didn't exist and is amenable to him.
Yes, I actually kind of came to a lot of the same conclusions about. I totally agree with you that we're in for 3.5 months of kind of unprecedented skullduggery. What's a worse word than skullduggery? Skullduggery is a great word, but there has to be something you can mix with something profane. It goes with I don't know, something like that.
One of the things that energizes a convention speech performance is attacking your rival. Trump doesn't even know who that is.
Right. Yes, and that's kind of the point right now. We don't know who's running the country, and w- let me back
Jeff,
up. Let me back up for a
Jeffrey
second.
Katzenberg will get back to us on that.
Yeah, so I want to back up and double down on not to be boring because the convention is we have to disagree with each other a little bit, but I think my overall impression of that RNC was probably very similar to yours. Uh, it was kind of a demonstration of energy. There is a whole ecosystem now within the Republican Party that is kind of varied. It's really interesting. If the schism in 2016 was between the old guard, Reince Priebus, John McCain Republicans, and then Trump, who had a very relatively small group of people on his side last time, and had real trouble generating people who could be speakers or anything. Now there is the old guard Republicans were there kind of superficially, but even within the Trump universe, there are now different factions, different kinds of nationalism. There's one that's more protectionist, one that's more traditionally free trade capitalist, one that advocates for sort of government spending to stimulate the economy. There is some of that supply side stuff that we heard from some of these folks, but also there's more of the Vivek Ramaswamy type of capitalists within the party, and there was just a ton of energy. As you see, there's a whole new media ecosystem that didn't exist before, and that's all interesting, but that only makes sense if we're about to have a normal election, and I'm no longer sure we're in that space. We
Well,
don't know who's running.
it's not, it's already not normal.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, we were contemplating the possibility that Trump would be in jail during this, convention. Then they say doesn't have to go to jail, or we're not going to hear that question until September. The Supreme Court rules in a way that takes out all this lawfare. Then he gets shot. Then he comes down to the convention, and apparently there was a hellacious fight over who would be his vice president, because a guy who just almost died needs a successor, and everybody rushed in to make sure they had control over who that might be. And there was a real war, like an ideological war within this inner circle that tries to control his actions.
Yeah,
And, so that's not a normal campaign so far for election.
we just had a commenter say that the theme of the convention is it's okay, it's cool to be a Trump supporter now. There is a little bit of that, and I think he's now moved the Overton window of acceptability for being at least willing to countenance Donald Trump as a normal politician. Van Jones was on CNN acting like a normal political commentator. Would saying something that was true, that Trump got up from a bullet, Biden couldn't overcome COVID. There are other commentators who are talking. They're sort of talking about him as if he were a regular presidential candidate, which is an extraordinary accomplishment. We haven't had that at all. There's been none of that kind of commentary. But yeah, they're building something big. But now, what happens from here? I think we can predict that Trump's electoral machine, all things being equal, which I don't think they are, he would look like a very good bet to win the presidency from here. And there's a national security apparatus that has done some very dastardly and devious things for the last 8 years that is now cornered, that is now dealing with messages that, not so subtle hints that, vengeance is coming. If
it just sent out its errand boy, Christopher Steele, to tell us, don't normalize this thing. I see signs that you're normalizing this.
Right.
Things are not allowed to return to normal.
Right.
Hey, we got to be prepared accordingly. That was a warning, man. America, I feel bad for us because the British secret agents now feel they have a say in our politics. And we countenance that.
I think you and I are also in the same place here, Walter. There is nothing that makes me more angry than the idea of a British intelligence person trying to have a say in my political life. That makes me want to pack him into a rocket and shoot him into space. There's something about that. That's one of the 5 most triggering things for me. They're
still the redcoats as far as I'm concerned.
Right, exactly. I lived in a county in New Jersey that one of its proudest accomplishments is that no redcoat ever set foot in the entire county. They had a system of signals in hills around the county that was used to create warnings so that they could never come in. So there are no redcoat bodies anywhere in Morris County, New Jersey. But I expect the worst of the worst to happen starting today. And we're about to head into a weekend where there is going to be a literal kind of palace coup, likely that's going to happen. If it doesn't happen this weekend, it's coming.
Well, on the Democrat side, I think what the message we're getting is that it's party over persons, that they are kind of officially leading their flock into a new sort of political self-awareness in which the party elders or the inner circle or the Politburo chooses the candidate, and the candidate is a figurehead for the party. But finally, it's the party that rules. Whereas, the Republicans moved into a cult of personality, Donald Trump. A cult of personality which he tamped down, I think, and started to integrate back into a party structure after having, made his own rebellion, mounted his own rebellion. But over on the Democrat side, they're now going to attempt to get us really into this melodrama and then, excited about whoever replaces him. And I'm going to tell you what, I think it's going to be complex. And I still don't rule out, Hillary Clinton or somebody like coming back, because the leaks that we're seeing say they're going to do a very complicated set of maneuvers. It's not just going to be, it's not just going to be Kamala. He may not even endorse her.
Yeah. Some of those leaks have already kind of turned out to be
baloney.
So the idea that they were going to bring in there's a certain speechwriter, I'm trying to remember his name.
Meacham.
Meacham. He's already been quoted as saying that's not true, and that he's sort of angry that was being spread about him.
Is he the former editor of Newsweek? Is that who they're talking about?
I can't remember.
Okay.
So I think my overall we gotta wrap up. So
yeah.
First of all, if anybody has any questions, and I think Walter and I both want to thank everybody for hanging out with us for all week. This has been cool. If anybody has any last minute questions or comments, please let us know right now. My final take on this is I think the entire convention wraps up a long narrative. Actually, it's not wrapped up because, from a literary standpoint, we still have to get to the ending, and we're a hell of a long way from that, unfortunately. But Trump, he essentially, the beginning of the story is when he begins to be labeled a Russian agent, which was around the time of his first convention. And we went off the rails then, and now it's when he was sort of identified for the first time as something other than a normal presidential candidate. Now he's brought himself to the edge of being normalized, as Christopher Steele has said, through determination, continuing to campaign, all these things. The convention, I think, was a success on its own. Judged objectively, I think you would say it's a success, but he's made the case, the argument to be normalized. All the other obstacles are now mostly out of the way, like the criminal cases. So the whole thing, it was a success. There's great energy, and now we just have to see what the pushback is going to be. I think I'm expecting something terrible. Walter, what's your overall conclusion? I think it's probably similar to mine, but if you have another take, let me know.
I fear war. I fear war. I fear, force majeure type events. The people who were in control of the Russiagate operation are in control of a lot more right now. Remember, they didn't hold the keys to real power when they were pulling that one. Now they do. Now they can move troops and so on. That's my big fear. I'm just an ordinary father of a young man in his early 20s, and I fear one basic thing, and that's him getting dragged off, or any of us getting dragged off into these things. And so that's always been the play in history, and at times of absolute chaos, and they are projecting greater weakness with this presidency than I have ever seen. Like, get it over with, man. If you're going to take out your candidate, take him the hell out.
Right.
At least do your dirty deeds with dispatch and confidence, and not this, nobody's in charge and we can't get anybody to step down, and we're going to try this and we're going to try that. If you're going to be coup plotters, do your damn coup.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I can't stand about this iteration of the political establishment. It sends up a gazillion trial balloons before it does anything, because all of its various little members who don't like to talk out in public, they're always persons familiar with the matter. They're afraid to go out in their own name and say things, and they never just do the thing. They have to creep up to it for days and weeks on end. So yeah, that is very frustrating. Just do it. Don't talk about it. But I expect them to pull something crazy.
Since ultimately they have control of the Democratic nominee's choice, of the choice of the nominee, they also have control of the context in which that nominee is received. So if they want to pull some thing where they put in, say, Hillary Clinton, the foreign affairs expert, the fighting Hillary Clinton, who's a realist about Russia and so on, well, we just have some incident that recalls for that kind of strength, because they can have a Gulf of Tonkin if they want to, or weapons of mass destruction. They've got all the cards right now. And they're going to deal them out in a way that's most favorable to them and unfavorable to the rivals. And they don't really give a damn about the rest of us. They've absolutely proven that.
Yeah. Well, for my part, we're both headed out of here, assuming planes aren't falling out of the sky by the time we get.
Like that Netflix movie we both had to watch.
Yeah, it's so funny. We were talking this morning about this is the plot of that Obama movie, produced movie that we did a show on earlier. So assuming we can get out of here, we're going to be heading out of Milwaukee momentarily on Racket. I'm hoping to do kind of a write-up of what happened on the platform. We heard some interesting stuff about things that were left out to make it a more centrist and moderate platform than you might have expected. I don't know that that's true, but I'm gonna do a little write-up of that, assuming other events don't intercede in the meantime, which is an assumption I can no longer make. So we're headed home. We'll both be in place again, and there'll be some written content on Racket about this. But thanks everybody. Walter, any final thoughts on the convention before we sign off?
It was kind of fun, and I've never had fun at a Republican convention before. I mean, it was kind of fun. Matt and Walter road trips.
Totally, yeah.
Totally, man. Listen, if all the flights are canceled because of the cyber attack, Matt and I are going to rent a Hertz car, and I'm going to say we're going to New Jersey via Montana. Okay, dude. First, we got to try.
Exactly.
And we will podcast from every,
truck stop,
truck stop and dive and brothel. And sorry, sometimes you end up at them thinking they're bars along the way.
We saw a few folks from that world in some places
Yeah,
this week.
yeah.
This was Matt and Walter, or Walter and Matt go to White Castle, and so it was a lot of fun, and again, a lot of fun to hang out with everybody. Thanks everybody for tuning in this morning, and we'll be back again with a normal America This Week next week. We didn't do a short story this week, I'm sorry, but we'll do one next week. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.
See you then.